Anime isn't always what it seems. Behind some of the most famous series ever made are disturbing secrets, psychological horror, and terrifying hidden meanings. Before we move any further, please make sure to subscribe us and press that like button. Death Note. What makes Death Note truly terrifying isn't the notebook itself, it's the idea behind it. In the world of Death Note, there's a deal known as the Shinigami Eyes. At first it sounds simple. You gain the power to see anyone's real name and lifespan just by looking at them. But there's a price. You must give up half of your own remaining life, and that's what makes the concept so disturbing. Because throughout human history, stories about forbidden knowledge always came with sacrifice. Ancient myths warned people not to seek powers beyond human understanding. In old folklore, demons and dark spirits often offered knowledge, power, or secrets in exchange for something precious, usually the human soul. Death Note takes that same terrifying idea and modernizes it. The Shinigami aren't just gods of death. They represent temptation, the temptation to control fate itself. And Light Yagami slowly becomes obsessed with that power. The more knowledge he gains, the less human he becomes. It isn't just about death. It's about how far humans are willing to go for power, even if it costs their own life. Perfect Blue. Perfect Blue doesn't rely on monsters or jump scares to terrify people. Instead, it attacks the human mind. The story follows a young idol singer who leaves her pop career behind to become an actress. But slowly, her reality begins to fall apart. She starts seeing versions of herself that shouldn't exist. Memories blur together, dreams feel real, and the audience becomes trapped inside her paranoia. That's what makes Perfect Blue so disturbing. It uses psychological horror instead of traditional fear. You're never completely sure what's real, and neither is the main character. The film intentionally confuses the viewer to create anxiety and emotional discomfort. And what makes it even scarier is how realistic it feels. There are no fantasy powers, no demons, no magic, just pressure, obsession, loneliness, and the collapse of identity. That realism is exactly why the movie became so influential. Many Hollywood psychological thrillers later used similar techniques. Rapid scene transitions, identity confusion, hallucinations blending into reality. Some scenes became so iconic that filmmakers studied them for inspiration years later. Perfect Blue proved something terrifying. Sometimes the human mind itself is the scariest horror of all. Neon Genesis Evangelion feels different from most anime the moment you watch it. Not because of the action, but because something about it feels emotionally wrong, uncomfortable, almost empty, and that feeling was completely intentional. Beneath the giant robots and apocalyptic battles, Neon Genesis Evangelion is actually a psychological breakdown disguised as an anime. The series constantly surrounds viewers with religious symbols, disturbing imagery, and long moments of silence, cross explosions, angelic beings, lonely empty rooms, characters staring into nothingness. Everything is designed to create emotional tension, but the real horror comes from the characters themselves, especially Shinji. Instead of becoming a confident hero, he slowly collapses under fear, loneliness, and depression. The anime forces viewers to sit inside his anxiety, sometimes for painfully long periods of silence, and that realism makes Evangelion deeply unsettling. Because the series doesn't show monsters destroying humanity, it shows people destroying themselves from the inside. That's why so many viewers describe Evangelion as emotionally exhausting. The anime was intentionally created to make people feel isolated, uncomfortable, and psychologically vulnerable. And even decades later, very few anime have ever managed to create that same haunting feeling. Berserk. Berserk isn't remembered as one of the darkest anime ever made because of violence alone. It's remembered because of how brutally human it feels. The story follows Guts, a warrior raised in constant suffering, betrayal, and war. From childhood, his world is filled with pain. And unlike most anime heroes, there's no promise that things will get better. But the true horror of Berserk begins with Griffith, a charismatic leader admired almost like a savior, someone who dreams of creating his own kingdom. At first, he appears noble, inspiring, almost perfect. But beneath that ambition lies something terrifying, an obsession so strong that he's willing to sacrifice the people closest to him in exchange for power. That moment becomes one of the most disturbing scenes in anime history, not because of monsters or gore, but because it explores the darkest side of human ambition. Berserk constantly asks a horrifying question: how far would someone go to achieve their dream? And the answer the series gives is deeply unsettling, because in Berserk, evil doesn't arrive as a monster hiding in the shadows. Sometimes it arrives wearing the face of someone you trusted. Hunter x Hunter. Most anime transformations are meant to feel exciting, heroic, powerful, but Gon's transformation in Hunter x Hunter feels genuinely terrifying, because this wasn't a moment of victory. It was the complete destruction of a child's innocence. Throughout the series, Gon is shown as optimistic, energetic, and emotionally pure. Even in dangerous situations, he still sees the world with hope. But after witnessing unbearable loss and grief, something inside him breaks. And for the first time, Gon stops caring about consequences. He makes a horrifying decision. In exchange for enough power to destroy his enemy, he sacrifices everything he could have become. His future, his potential, possibly even his humanity. And that's why the transformation feels so disturbing. The series doesn't present it as a heroic power-up. It feels more like watching someone destroy themselves through rage and revenge. Even the atmosphere changes. The music becomes heavier. The visuals become darker. And Gon himself barely looks human anymore. Hunter x Hunter turns what should have been a triumphant anime moment into something tragic and horrifying, because in the end, Gon didn't truly win. He simply lost himself completely. Anime can inspire us, but sometimes its darkest moments reveal the terrifying side of human emotion.